The air in Riverdale was thick with sorrow, clinging to every corner of the worn-out neighborhood. 13-year-old Derek Miles had learned too early that life wasn't fair, and fair didn't pay the bills. His father, Caleb, once the proud provider of the family, now lay weak in bed, his face hollow from battling cancer. Caleb had always believed a man should take care of his home. He never wanted his wife to lift a finger for work. But fate had other plans. Now, Ruth, his mother, worked long hours cleaning offices just to keep food on the table. Her hands were calloused, her eyes heavy. But what broke Derek most were the things she said when she thought no one was listening. "I'm trying, Lisa," he once heard her whisper on the phone to his aunt. "But sometimes I just want to leave it all. The sickness, the bills. Jonah, I'm so tired." Jonah, Derek's 6-year-old little brother, who lived in a world of his own. Diagnosed with autism, Jonah rarely spoke, but when he did, it was soft and scattered, like stars trying to shine through fog. Derek never blamed his mother. How could he? She was drowning, and he refused to let her sink alone. He went out every day after school, knocking on doors, asking at stores, anything to help. Most turned him away. "You're just a kid," they'd say, or worse, they'd pretend not to see him at all. Rejection stung, but not more than watching his mother cry in the kitchen. Then came Elliot's auto shop, a dusty corner garage, run by a gruff but fair old man. Derek stood outside for half an hour before gathering the courage to ask. "I'll sweep, clean up, anything. I don't need much, just a chance," Derek pleaded. Elliot gave him a long, unreadable look, then grunted. "Come early, leave late, no slacking. You mess up, you're out." "Yes, sir." Derek's voice trembled, not with fear, but relief. He cleaned oil spills, organized tools, even fetched lunch for the mechanics. It wasn't glamorous. His hands were always sore, his feet ached. But when Elliot handed him a few bills at the end of the week, Derek felt 10 feet tall. Every evening after washing the grease from his arms, he'd sit beside Jonah's bed and talk to him, even if Jonah didn't always respond. "I helped fix a tire today," Derek whispered once, brushing Jonah's soft curls. "The guy said thank you, Joe, like I was someone." Jonah blinked, then mumbled, "You, someone." That was enough to keep Derek going. Because in a world where life had taken everything from them, Derek was giving something back. One silent night, one scraped knuckle, one quiet victory at a time. The sun cast long shadows across Riverdale as 13-year-old Derek Miles finished mopping the tiled floor of the small convenience store where he worked evenings. Across the street, the towering glass building of United Trust Bank shimmered in the light. Derek glanced through the window, just in time to see chaos erupt. 6 masked men stormed into the bank, rifles raised. The automatic doors barely had time to close before a gunshot blasted into the ceiling. Derek froze, the mop slipping from his hands. From his side of the street, he could see customers dropping to the floor, tellers being dragged away, and a security guard tackled violently. The leader, a tall man dressed in black, shouted something, but Derek couldn't hear over the ringing in his ears. His heart raced. That was when he saw Mrs. Evelyn Morris, the elderly woman who always bought peanut brittle from the store, clutching her purse in fear. The gunman pointed his weapon directly at her. Derek ducked behind the counter, his breaths short and shaky. He could run, hide, pretend he saw nothing, but something inside him refused. "I have to do something," he whispered. Slipping out the back door of the store, Derek circled around, staying low. He remembered seeing 2 men in suits enter the bank earlier, FBI maybe. He had to find them. Through a side entrance, left ajar during the panic, Derek crept in. The bank was quieter now, the robbers controlling the crowd. He found the agents in a secluded office, tied up, bruised, but alive. Derek didn't speak. He just moved, instinctively untying them. One agent immediately reached for a hidden radio and called for backup. Derek nodded and vanished into the hallway. He needed a distraction. Triggering the bank's alarm, he dove under a desk as blaring sirens split the silence. In the confusion, he toppled a nearby file cabinet, sending papers flying. The agents took advantage. One tackled a robber, another fired a warning shot. Then the nightmare shifted. The leader, Carson Hayes, spotted Derek as he tried to escape. He grabbed him roughly, shoving the cold barrel of a gun to his forehead. "Well, well, a tiny hero," Carson hissed. "Want to die for nothing?" Derek's voice trembled, but he stood his ground. "If you hurt me, the FBI will never let you walk away. But if you let me go, maybe you still have a chance." Carson hesitated, just long enough. A gunshot rang out. The agent's bullet struck Carson's shoulder. He screamed, dropping his weapon. Within seconds, the FBI swarmed in, subduing the rest of the gang. Derek collapsed beside the nearest desk, his chest heaving. An agent knelt beside him. "You saved lives, son." Later, as he stood outside, sirens wailing and lights flashing, Mrs. Evelyn Morris found him, took his trembling hands, and whispered, "You're a hero, Derek." He didn't feel like one, but maybe, just maybe, he was. The next day, something happened that Derek could never have imagined. Mr. Harrison Cole, the owner of United Trust Bank, arrived at their tiny apartment. He stepped inside with a calm smile and a folder in his hand, one that would change their lives. Inside were documents, the keys to a fully paid-for house in a quiet, safe neighborhood, no rent, no mortgage. But that wasn't all. Mr. Cole turned to Derek's mother, Ruth, and gently said, "You won't have to work those long shifts anymore. We've arranged full medical treatment for your husband and Jonah, at no cost to you." And Derek, he faced the boy who had risked everything. "You now have a full scholarship that will take you all the way through college. Your bravery saved lives, Derek. This is the least we can do." Derek stood speechless, emotions crashing into him like waves. He looked at his father, who for the first time in months smiled without pain. Jonah played quietly with a toy in the corner, humming softly, a sign of calm Derek hadn't seen in ages. Later that evening, in their new home, Ruth gently called him into the kitchen. She wiped her hands on a towel, tears resting in her eyes. "You saved us, Derek," she said, voice trembling, "not just with what you did in that bank, but with the way you never gave up. I'm proud of you. Thank you, my son." Derek blinked, trying to hold back tears. For the first time in a long while, their home felt warm, not just from the lights, but from hope. Outside, reporters waited. Cameras flashed. But Derek didn't care for the spotlight. He hadn't acted for attention. He just did what he believed was right. And as he stood by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he allowed himself to believe it. Things were finally going to be okay. This story reminds us that sometimes the strongest people are the ones carrying the quietest burdens and still choosing to fight through them.